Mission 100, Day 70. Readings from the Holy Bible, the Wisdom of Solomon, chapters 13, 14, and 15, and St. Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, chapters 7 and 8. Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 13. Digression on false worship. Nature of worship. Foolish by nature were all who were in ignorance of God, and who from the good things seen did not succeed in knowing the one who is, and from studying the works did not discern the artisan. Instead, either fire or wind or swift air or the circuit of stars or the mighty water or the luminaries of heaven, the governors of the world, they considered gods. Now if out of joy in their beauty they thought them gods, let them know how far more excellent is the Lord than these. For the original source of beauty fashioned them. Or if they were struck by their might and energy, let them realize from these things how much more powerful is the one who made them. For from the greatness and the beauty of created things, their original author by analogy is seen. But yet for these the blame is less, for they have gone astray perhaps, though they seek God and wish to find Him. For they search busily among His works, but are distracted by what they see, because the things seen are fair. But again, not even these are pardonable. For if they so far succeeded in knowledge that they could speculate about the world, how did they not more quickly find its Lord? Idolatry. But wretched are they, and in dead things are their hopes, who termed God's things made by human hands, gold and silver the product of art and image of beasts, or useless stone the work of an ancient hand, the carpenter and wooden idols. A carpenter may cut down a suitable tree and skillfully scrape off all its bark, and deftly applying his art produce something fit for daily use, and use the scraps from his handiwork in preparing his food and have his fill. Then the good for nothing refuse from these remnants crooked wood grown full of knots he takes and carves to occupy his spare time. This wood he models with mindless skill and patterns it on the image of a human being, or makes it resemble some worthless beast. When he has daubed it with red and crimsoned its surface with red stain, and daubed over every blemish in it, he makes a fitting shrine for it and puts it on the wall, fastening it with a nail. Thus he provides for it lest it fall down, knowing that it cannot help itself, for truly it is an image and needs help. But when he prays about his goods, or marriage, or children, he is not ashamed to address the thing without a soul. For vigor he invokes the powerless, for life he entreats the dead, for aid he beseeches the wholly incompetent, for travel something that cannot even walk. For profit in business and success with his hands, he asks power of a thing with hands utterly powerless. Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 14. Again, one preparing for a voyage and about to traverse the wild waves cries out to wood more unsound than the boat that bears him. For the urge for profits devised this latter, and wisdom the artisan produced it. But your providence, O Father, guides it, for you have furnished even in the sea a road, and through the waves a steady path, showing that you can save from any danger, so that even one without skill may embark. But you will that the products of your wisdom be not idle. Therefore people trust their lives even to the most frail wood, and were safe crossing the waves on a raft. For of old, when the proud giants were being destroyed, the hope of the universe who took refuge on a raft, left to the world a future for the human family under the guidance of your hand. For blessed is the wood through which righteousness comes about, but the handmaid idol is accursed, and its maker as well. For he for having produced it, and the corruptible thing because it was termed a god. Equally odious to God are the evildoer and the evil deed, and the thing made will be punished with its maker. Therefore, upon even the idols of the nations shall a judgment come, since they became abominable among God's works, snares for human souls, and a trap for the feet of the senseless. The origin and evils of idolatry. For the source of wantonness is the devising of idols, and their invention a corruption of life. For in the beginning they were not, nor can they ever continue. For from human emptiness they came into the world, and therefore A sudden end is devised for them, for a father afflicted with untimely mourning made an image of the child so quickly taken from him, and now honored as a god what once was dead, and handed down to his household mysteries and sacrifices. Then in the course of time the empire's practice gained strength and was observed as law, and graven things were worshipped by royal decrees. People who lived so far away that they could not honor him in his presence copied the appearance of the distant king, and made public image of him they wish to honor, out of zeal to flatter the absent one as though present, and to promote this observance among those to whom it was strange. The artisan's ambition provided a stimulus, for he, perhaps in his determination to please the ruler, labored over the likeness to the best of his skill, and the masses, drawn by the charm of the workmanship, s- soon took as an object of worship the one who shortly before was honored as a human being. And this became a snare for the world, that people enslaved to either grief or tyranny conferred the incommunicable name on stones and wood. Then it was not enough for them to err in their knowledge of God, but even though they live in a great war resulting from ignorance, they call such evils peace. For while they practice either child sacrifices or occult mysteries, or frenzied carousing in exotic rites, they no longer respect either lives or purity of marriage, but they either waylay and kill each other or grieve each other by adultery. And all is confusion, blood and murder, theft and guile, corruption, faithlessness, turmoil, perjury, disturbance of good people, neglect of gratitude, besmirching of souls, unnatural lust, disorder in marriage, adultery, and shamelessness. For the worship of infamous idols is the reason and source and extreme of all evil. For they either go mad with enjoyment, or prophesy lies, or live lawlessly, or lightly perjure themselves. For as their trust is in lifeless idols, they expect no harm when they have sworn falsely. But on both counts, justice shall overtake them, because they thought perversely of God by devoting themselves to idols, and because they deliberately swore false oaths, despising piety. For it is not the might of those by whom they swear, but the just retribution of sinners, that ever follows upon the transgression of the wicked. Chapter 15. But you, our God, are good and true, slow to anger, and governing all with mercy. For even if we sin, we are yours and know your might. But we do not sin, knowing that we belong to you. For to know you well is complete righteousness, and to know your might is the root of immortality. For the evil creation of human fancy did not deceive us, nor the fruitless labor of painters, a form smeared with varied colors, the sight of which arouses yearning in a fool, till he longs for the inanimate form of a dead image. Lovers of evil things and worthy of such hopes are they who make them and long for them and worship them. The potter's clay idols. For the potter, laboriously working the soft earth, molds for our service each single article. He fashions out of the same clay both the vessels that serve for clean purposes, and they are opposites all alike. As to what shall be the use of each vessel of either class, the worker in clay is the judge. With misspent toil he molds a meaningless god from the self same clay, though he himself shortly before he was made from the earth, and is soon to go whence he was taken, when the life that was lent him is demanded back. But his concern is not that he is to die, nor that his span of life is brief. Rather, he vies with goldsmiths and silversmiths, and emulates molders of bronze, and takes pride in fashioning counterfeits. Ashes his heart is, more worthless than earth is his hope, more ignoble than clay his life, because he knew not the one who fashioned him and breathed into him a quickening soul and infused a vital spirit. Instead, he esteemed our life a mere game, and our span of life a holiday for gain. For one must, says he, make a profit in every way, be it even from evil. For more than anyone else, he knows that he is sinning. When out of earthen stuff he creates fragile vessels and idols alike. But more stupid of all and worse than senseless in mind are the enemies of your people who enslaved them. For they esteemed all the idols of the nations as gods, which cannot use their eyes to see, nor nostrils to breathe the air, nor ears to hear, nor fingers on their hands for feeling. Even their feet are useless to walk with. For it was a mere human being who made them, one living on borrowed breath who fashioned them. For no one is able to fashion a god like himself. He is mortal, and what he makes with lawless hands is dead. For he is better than the things he worships. He at least lives, but never his idols. Second example resumed. Besides, they worship the most loathsome beasts. As regards stupidity, these are worse than the rest. For beasts are neither good looking nor desirable. They have escaped both the approval of God and his blessing. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. St. Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 7. Advice to the married. Now, in regard to the matters about which you wrote, it is a good thing for a man not to touch a woman. But because of cases of immorality, every man should have his own wife, and every woman her husband. The husband should fulfill his duty toward his wife, and likewise the wife toward her husband. A wife does not have authority over her own body, but rather her husband, and similarly, a husband does not have authority over his own body, but rather his wife. Do not deprive each other, except perhaps by mutual consent for a time, to be free for prayer, but then return to one another, so that Satan may not tempt you through your lack of self-control. This I say by way of concession, however not as a command. Indeed, I wish every one to be as I am, but each has a particular gift from God, one of one kind and one of another. Now to the unmarried and to widows I say, it is a good thing for them to remain as they are, as I do. But if they cannot exercise self-control, they should marry, for it is better to marry than to be on fire. To the married, however, I give this instruction, not I but the Lord. A wife should not separate from her husband, and if she does separate, she must either remain single or become reconciled to her husband, and a husband should not divorce his wife. To the rest I say, not the Lord, if any brother has a wife who is an unbeliever, and she is willing to go on living with him, he should not divorce her. And if any woman has a husband who is an unbeliever, and he is willing to go on living with her, she should not divorce her husband. For the unbelieving husband is made holy through his wife, and the unbelieving wife is made holy through the brother. Otherwise your children would be unclean, whereas in fact they are holy. If the unbeliever separates, however, let him separate. The brother or sister is not bound in such cases. God has called you to peace. For how do you know, wife, whether you will save your husband? Or how do you know, husband, whether you will save your wife? The life that the Lord has assigned. Only everyone should live as the Lord has assigned, just as God called each one. I give this order in all the churches. Was someone called after he had been circumcised? He should not try to undo his circumcision. Was an uncircumcised person called? He should not be circumcised. Circumcision means nothing and uncircumcision means nothing. What matters is keeping God's commandments. Everyone should remain in the state in which he was called. Were you a slave when you were called? Do not be concerned. But even if you can gain your freedom, make the most of it. For the slave called in the Lord is a freed person in the Lord, just as free person who has been called is a slave of Christ. You have been purchased at a price. Do not become slaves to human beings, brothers. Everyone should continue before God in the state in which was called. Advice to virgins and widows. Now, in regard to virgins, I have no commandment from the Lord, but I give my opinion as one who by the Lord's mercy is trustworthy. So, this is what I think best because of the present distress, that it is a good thing for a person to remain as he is. Are you bound to a wife? Do not seek a separation. Are you free of a wife? Then do not look for a wife. If you marry, however, you do not sin, nor does an unmarried woman sin if she marries. But such people will experience affliction in their earthly life, and I would like to spare you that. I tell you, brothers, the time is running out. From now on, let those having wives act as not having them, those weeping as not weeping, those rejoicing as not rejoicing, those buying as not owning, those using the world as not using it fully. For the world in its present form is passing away. I should like you to be free of anxieties. An unmarried man is anxious about the things of the Lord, how he may please the Lord, but a married man is anxious about the things of the world, how he may please his wife, and he is divided. An unmarried woman or a virgin is anxious about the things of the Lord, so that she may be holy in both body and spirit. A unmarried a married woman, on the other hand, is anxious about the things of the world, how she may please her husband. I am telling you this for your own benefit, not to impose a restraint upon you, but for the sake of propriety and adherence to the Lord without distraction. If anyone thinks he is behaving improperly toward his virgin, and if a critical moment has come, and so it has to be, let him do as he wishes. He is committing no sin. Let them get married. The one who stands firm in his resolve, however, who is not under compulsion, but has the power over his own will, and has made up his mind to keep his virgin, will be doing well. So then, the one who marries his virgin does well. The one who does not marry her will do better. A wife is bound to her husband as long as he lives, but if her husband dies, she is free to be married to whomever she wishes, provided that it be in the Lord. She is more blessed, though, in my opinion, if she remains as she is, and I think that I too have the Spirit of God. St. Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 8. Knowledge insufficient. Now, in regard to meat sacrificed to idols, we realize that all of us have knowledge. Knowledge inflates with pride, but love builds up. If anyone supposes he knows something, he does not yet know as he ought to know. But if one loves God, one is known by him. So, about the eating of meat sacrificed to idols, we know that there is no idol in the world, and that there is no God but one. Indeed, even though there are so called gods in heaven and on earth, there are, to be sure, many gods and many lords. Yet for us there is one God the Father, for whom all things are and for whom we exist, and one Lord Jesus Christ, through whom all things are and through whom we exist. Practical rules. But not all have this knowledge. There are some who have been so used to idolatry up until now that when they eat meat sacrificed to idols, their conscience, which is weak, is defiled. Now, food will not bring us closer to God. We are no worse off if we do not eat, nor are we better off if we do. But make sure that this liberty of yours in no way becomes a stumbling block to the weak. If someone sees you with your knowledge reclining at table in the temple of an idol, may not his conscience, too weak as it is, be built up to eat the meat sacrificed to idols? Thus, through your knowledge, the weak person is brought to destruction, the brother for whom Christ died. When you sin in this way against your brothers and wound their consciences, weak as they are you not sinning against Christ? Therefore, if food causes my brother to sin, I will never eat meat again, so that it may not cause my brother to sin. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.